An 8-year-old gets a very strange inheritance.
When my dad died, everyone was heartbroken.
But what does a boy do with a winery?
The funniest thing is when I would tell my friends' parents, and they would totally freak out.
Talk about getting your feet wet in a new business.
Drinking this grape juice.
That is really good.
But how does the family keep it from dying on the vine?
I didn't know anything about wine, except that I like to drink it.
So what's the heir going to do when he grows up?
I'm trying to prove that I'm not the owner's kid who just gets handed these things.
I'm Jamie Colby, and today I'm traveling through the Willamette Valley of Oregon, wine country. In fact, this area is home to around 400 wineries. So you can probably guess what this episode of Strange Inheritance is all about. But it's one that was passed down far too soon and to a most improbable heir.
My name is Pascal Brooks. When I was 8 years old, I inherited something that is pretty special and still blows my mind.
Thank you so much for having me, Pascal. Wow, it is an honor to meet you. How unusual is it for somebody your age to be in charge of all this?
I'm not the one that does the work. I simply own it.
The 18-year-old may own this winery, but he can't legally drink its product. However, he does pitch in every so often to get a good feel for his strange inheritance. Nice to see you helping out. The family winery. Very nice. The story of how Pascal became the world's youngest owner of a winery begins with his father, Jimmy Brooks. Janie Hoyk is Pascal's aunt. She and Pascal's dad, Jimmy, grew up in Portland.
As we got older and got out of high school, we both took very, very different paths.
Janie zips through a degree in accounting, while Jimmy goes on the 5-year plan, finally gets his BA, but then decides to find himself by traveling through Europe.
So he moved over there, took a few jobs, would go spend his money traveling and find another job.
For one job, Jimmy harvests grapes in the Beaujolais region of France. At another, he teaches English as a second language in Krakow, Poland, a position he takes after setting eyes on 20-year-old waitress Bożena Katuba. Romance leads to marriage in September 1995. Soon, baby Pascal arrives, and Jimmy moves his young family back to Portland.
I remember the first time when we drove from the airport into Portland. I've never seen anything like that. This beautiful river and then the lights.
Jimmy gets a gig as a vineyard manager and in his spare time starts his own brand of wine. He enlists the help of a friend, Chris Williams, who until that point was not a winemaker, but a motorcycle mechanic.
Jimmy's whole goal was to be able to make wines that people enjoyed, make wines that we enjoyed.
But while Jimmy's focused on his career, his marriage to Bożena turns bitter. In 2000, they divorce. They agree that Pascal will spend every other weekend with his dad. On many a Saturday, Jimmy takes Pascal to work. Your dad tried to pull you into this as a kid, right? He wanted you around?
Whenever I was with him, it was more for the fact that I was with him and he was happy that I was there.
What do you remember about your dad?
I remember waking up and it'd be cold and early and we'd get into his dilapidated truck and we'd stop for coffee and a cinnamon roll early in the morning.
By 2001, Jimmy is head winemaker for one winery, and as a perk, he's allowed to make thousands of cases of his own Brooks wine on the side. Jimmy starts buying grapes from other farmers, then leases a 20-acre plot planted with old vines. He hopes to buy it one day. Jimmy becomes a pioneer in Oregon of a farming method he learned in France called biodynamics. It uses no chemicals or additives, but focuses on soil fertility and even the phases of the moon.
So the fruit comes in.
Chris gives me a little backstage tour and shows me how they make their Pinot Noir. They're beautiful grapes.
Yeah,
May I taste one?
Of course. Nice and ripe, sweet, but not too sweet.
Amazing.
The idea behind Pinot is to have whole berries, which lets the fermentation happen inside the berry.
This is a pretty big bucket of grapes. How many bottles of wine am I looking at?
About 120 gallons, which would be roughly 50 cases.
By December 2003, Jimmy's wines are getting noticed throughout Oregon and beyond. He tells the Atlantic Monthly magazine he hopes that one day his winery will be his son's inheritance.
He stated in that very clearly that he wanted his winery to be a legacy for Pascal.
Then one Saturday morning in September 2004, Jimmy is arguing with his ex-wife about whose turn it is to be with Pascal. After that call, Jimmy makes another one to his girlfriend.
He was on the phone with his girlfriend when he mentioned that his chest was hurting and could she come over.
Before Jimmy's girlfriend can arrive, Jimmy dies of an aortic aneurysm. He's 38 years old. Pascal is 8.
I think when my dad died, everyone was heartbroken. Kids soak up the atmosphere. And it wasn't that I readily wanted to do that, but you just don't know how to rationalize it.
Jimmy's sister Janie is at home in Northern California with her husband and 2 young children when she gets the call. She immediately begins the long trek up to Oregon. She arrives to find a crowd of people she barely knows in her brother's house. What happens next will not only turn Janie's life upside down, but determine whether her nephew's strange inheritance is anything but a crop of grapes about to wither on the vine.
One of the few things you can do for someone who's died is help their family, take care of their unfinished business.
That's next. And later?
How deep is it?
About up to your knees.
I failed gymnastics. Ooh.
But first, our strange inheritance quiz question. Why do some winemakers crush their grapes with their feet? Is it because it's the cheapest way? It gives the wine a nice bouquet? Or for flavor? The answer in a moment.